Hey, No Bunk fam. Hope you're having a beautiful day. I am here with some great people that I'd love to introduce you to. You already know Matt. Matt is the one that did not pick the right people in the U.S. Women's Open, but we're not gonna really
You
stress
gotta
about
let that go. You gotta
that.
let it
That's
go.
the last one. That's the last one. I had to get the last one in and get it recorded on tape and saved for prosperity. But we're also here with Kyle, who is part of Feel Under Par Performance Golf Coaching. Kyle, how you doing today?
Doing well. Really appreciate you guys having me here today. Really excited.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. And we also like to start with the question of how'd you get into the game? What's your history been with golf? And how does that get you to where you are today?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I would say what's great about that question is everybody's like, how did they get into golf is so different. As I'm sure you guys know, like it's always like the wildest thing. Um, my introduction was when I was early in life, so I was pretty young. My parents played not very well, like they're just regular people, so they just went out and we had a 9-hole course near our house, so we would go out every once in a while. I think it was like back in the day when I played, it was like $11 to go play. So it was just this local muni, like super fun to go run around at, and that's how I learned the game. It's short. It's funny though because I go back now and sometimes I'll play it, and I remember the third hole and the ninth hole were the like long par fours, and the third hole was like I when I would use my driver and I think I would get it into the fairway or something, and now I go back and to the green, I think it's only like 230 yards. So like I'm not even pulling, anything super high anymore. So it's like, I think it's like a hybrid for me now. So it's just funny going back to that and being like, wow, I really wasn't great, but you're a kid. So yeah, I started playing when I was young, and then I, like my parents, I wasn't that great. I just loved the game so much, and I remember trying out for my high school team, and I went to high school with like I don't know, I think maybe like 20 people tried out, and they probably took like 15 people, and one of them wasn't me. I just wasn't good enough to make my high school team. But it
That's a
never.
Michael Jordan story right there.
What's
That's the
that?
redemption arc.
The redemption arc, yeah, keeping my hopes alive for the pro the pro card. But after that, I think for a while, I just got wrapped up with like other parts of life, girlfriends and work and all the stuff that like kind of comes into play. I got pulled into the very like the normal, like, oh, you have to go to school and get a good job and all that stuff, and so golf took like a backseat for probably close to a decade for me, and then around 8 or so years ago is when my buddies had gotten into golf. It was sort of that first boom of like when golf started picking back up again, and like when I think a lot of people started liking golf for some reason. I don't even know why, but people started picking it up, and my buddies started playing, and so I got back into it. We kind of struggled together and got better together, and it was a lot of fun. And then, as you know, now just have continued to play. I met my now wife at the time playing golf because she also loved to play golf, so she was kind of like giving me tips here and there, and it was a lot of fun. So it brought me to where I am today playing golf, but I really found my sort of passion. I would say my passion in coaching golf because I've always enjoyed helping people, but I was never like I'm gonna, I'm not gonna be someone who tells you like how to swing the club because I kind of firmly believe that there is no perfect swing. So it was never my path to do that. I'm more of the psychology head game kind of guy who was like, okay, you have the skills. What's stopping you? And so from breaking 80 or breaking 70 or winning a tournament or whatnot. And so that's sort of been my life for the past year or so is really helping people perform better and perform to the skills that they have, honestly, and break the things that they want to do.
You
You
know,
know, oh Matt, go ahead, bud.
that origin story I think is always such an important one, right? Because golf, I think for a lot of us, played a role in our childhood or
Yeah.
became like a source of that new adult um, recreation, right? At a
Yeah.
time when we're all looking for that thing that, like, we're not playing high school sports anymore. Maybe we play college, but at some point, right, we're all told we can't play the children's games. We don't know when, but we'll be told one day. One of the things you mentioned that I think is really interesting is that your partner plays, and from what you may have let on early on, at one point she was whipping up on you.
Yeah. So as I was saying before we jumped on, I love talking about this, but she's been playing probably like altogether longer than I had been playing, because she started around the same age as I did. Her dad is a really good golfer, and so she grew up with a guy who was really good at golf, and she played on her high school team. She played in tournaments, won some stuff, um and that's why she's been good for a while. And then um we had our child, our daughter, a year and a half ago, and so it's just the game sort of not fallen off. Like, she's not bad, but she just isn't playing that much right now.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
No,
She's gonna come for you.
Don't tell her. Don't tell her. That.
We'll edit that part out. Don't worry.
Yeah. I'll send her the edited version. Yeah, but it's really funny, knowing you guys now, like learning about what you do. This thing that I've always dealt with her is, we'll go play golf, and she gets these looks all the time because she's played for a long time. As you guys know, as we talked about, she's played from the whites or the blues when she goes to play, but people don't know that. You can't, like, it's not like on your shirt that says that. So you walk up to the blues, she's playing with me or whatever, and then somebody's playing with us, or maybe the group in front of us or behind us is like, oh, the ladies' tees are up there. And first of all, let's just get rid of those terminologies, because it's the forward tees and the back tees and all that. And so, like, but also it just from the get-go creates this very exclusive mindset of, oh, you don't belong here, whether it be golfing or on this tee box or whatever. And it gets in her head, and she plays worse for a few holes because she's thinking about what these guys are thinking of her, and she knows that it's dumb. She's like, logically, I know that I shouldn't be thinking about that, but the emotion is like, I don't feel like I belong. And it's really hard to see that happening to someone. And so but yeah, so it's like, let me just play my game. I'm out here to play golf. Like, why don't you go play golf too? And usually it's guys that are worse than her.
You're a golf coach, and I'm going to leave the psychology to the psychologist who's on the call. But one of the things that I always think about a lot is golf can be a very ego-driven game. As a coach, if you could change one thing about the game, and maybe it's about the tees or it's about that first tee, what would you change to make people feel like the game is a more accessible place to be?
That's a really good question. There's probably so many changes that I have, but the first one that comes to the top of my head is dress code. For some reason, like having to look a certain way and dress a certain part to play this game. I know a lot of courses out there now are kind of breaking that stigma of like, hey, play in shorts and a t-shirt. And because that immediately, I mean, if you think about it, when you're dressed up, you feel a little more tense anyway, because it usually means like something important is happening. But golf is a game when it comes down to it. So like, let's play it in things you would play games in. And that's, even if it's some a uniform popped into my head, but even if it's something that like is shorts and a t-shirt, all the same color, whatever I don't care what it is, but like, you don't have to be super dressed up. And that's kind of what pops up first. But I love the thing about the ego, because if I can get rid of people's egos, that they would, so many more people would be so much better than they are.
Yeah, no, I love that. And you think about the tees, like, tees are a measure of how you play. They're not a measure of your, quote unquote manliness.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, you can learn a lot playing from 5,200 yards and 7,200 yards.
There's one a free shout out here. One Instagram account that I think it's like the Connected Golfer is his name. I can't remember if that's his tag, but he always plays from the red tees, or at least shows that on his like Instagram stuff, because he's like, if you can play from here, then like, that's great. Like, and that's the thing, if you can start hitting par from the red tees, then move back. Then if you can do par from there, then move back. And I think where you come into this game with a very, people who taught you are from a different generation, so you come in with their thoughts. You kind of get that limited mindset immediately of like, okay, you're a man, so you start on the whites or the blues. You're a woman, you start on the reds, and you kind of stay on the reds, and it's very separatist from the beginning.
For sure. And when we think about the ego, on the other side of ego is vulnerability. And sometimes we use our ego to fight against vulnerability. And as a coach, as somebody who teaches and it helps people get from a beginner standpoint to a more advanced standpoint, wherever they are in their golf journey, where do you see vulnerability as part of the teaching process? And how do you make somebody who feels vulnerable while they're learning feel more comfortable, feel more empowered during your sessions or during the longitudinal learning process?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I keep saying that because you guys ask great questions, apparently. But I heard myself saying it. I was like, I keep saying that. But the vulnerability piece is huge because if you can be vulnerable, you can look at yourself from an objective standpoint and not say I suck, or you top a drive and you're like, I'm the worst golfer or whatever it is. And that's vulnerability. It's the same in golf as it is in life. If you can be open to your emotions, then you can honestly you can go further wherever it is that you want to go. And I think that's something that we're all kind of learning as we're out there. Remind me of the second part of your question, because I absolutely forgot it.
No. I think that's beautiful. The idea that we're trying to make space for vulnerability. I think people run from vulnerability because they have been taught that that's a sign of weakness, as opposed to vulnerability is where the growth happens, both in your game, both as in your emotional wellness, both in relationships with other people. And golf really gives you the opportunity to embrace vulnerability or difficulty and then find a way to be successful.
Yeah, the people that I work with, I mean, you kind of have to. I tell them, I say, you have to be coachable to be coached. Like, you cannot come into it with this mindset of like, you coach are going to fix me, because it's like, I've never fixed anyone. They're the ones that help themselves. And actually, I'm saying it, but I don't like the term fixing, because you're not broken. It's just your game isn't broken, things like that. So you have to just be open to exploring what might be going wrong in your game or whatever it is, and tackling that on your own. Like, I'm there to help you figure out what that is and some method, some pathing to get through that, but you're the one doing it, and I think that's what people have to recognize when they go into coaching, is that you have to be coachable above all.
Gotcha. And I got one more question. We probably have some people who are listening right now that are on the fence about whether they should go see a golf pro or not. They like what you're saying, but they just have that kind of feeling in their body or in their mind about it. What would you say to those folks who, have the opportunity? They may have somebody that they know, or they have the financial means to make it happen. What can it do to their game and also their experience of playing golf in terms of just, I was about to say fighting that vulnerability, but sitting with that vulnerability and also sitting with that ego part?
Yeah. So if you're thinking about getting some coaching, whether it's traditional swing instruction or something like with me, where it's, the mental side of the game, the performance side, just be open to the experience. Know that going through this, you don't have to be a certain handicap. You don't have to have certain clubs that you're playing with. You don't have to have whatever like qualifications you think you might need. It's not. You don't need any of that.
Hey,
did we lose you? You came
we're
back?
going to reshoot that part of it. So we'll start
sure.
the question over. We lost you there for a second. So
my bad.
No, you're good.
We
JJ.
might have lost everything.
You think
that
so?
happened to John, right?
No, he got kicked out. So we're still good.
Okay.
Are
you still recording right now?
Yeah. So just start the question over.
So Kyle, just a heads up, if you have other tabs open, it might be taking some of your your bandwidth away. So just close those, and that will probably help too.
Oh, okay. So should I do that now? And like, will you guys wait
Don't
for
close
me to?
this one, but just close like I have a whole tab army up usually when I'm not
Yeah,
recording.
I do too. Well, so I actually I heard my WhatsApp like being pinging, and I realized it was up there, so I went to that window and closed it. So it may have because I
That's why
switched
it paused
windows.
for a second. You got to
Yeah.
stay in the
Okay.
window.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, you're
No, no
good.
worries, no
You're
worries.
good.
All right.
Yeah, I
Let's
can
do
hear
it.
You're
it
the
again.
man. All
Do,
right.
do you wanna end the record and then start a new one, or just keep going?
No, we can clip out of this, I think.
Okay. All right. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Kyle, we have a lot of beginner golfers on the platform, and also
Mhm.
just people who've been wavering back and forth and been on the fence about should I get a coach, should I get a performance coach, or maybe a golf pro to fix my swing, or we don't say fix the swing anymore. You taught me that today. Work on my swing to make it more
Yeah.
successful. What are some of the things that you would say to that person to help them, like you said earlier, be able to sit in that place of vulnerability, but also be able to deal and cope with and find solutions for some of that ego piece that happens when you're on the first tee or when you're playing this game that is such a public game?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have hesitancy to like improve their game in any way because they believe that there's so many like qualifications, whether it be getting your you know, I know a lot of people always talk about getting a club fitting, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not the right handicap to get my clubs fit because then I don't want to like fix it for the handicap I have now because I want to get lower." And it's like, or should I? So should I get a instruction first, or should I get a club fitting, or should I get a coach? And it's like, what I would say is do what's best for your game, and that doesn't there's no prerequisites. You could be a beginner, you could be a pro. I mean, there are pros who have mental golf, coaches, performance coaches, someone like me that's on the sidelines with them. Like Rory brought in Dr. Bob Rotella when he was playing the Masters just to have him with him. And it's like, you would think as a pro, there might be this thought that, oh, I'm one of the best there is. I don't need this kind of stuff anymore and things like that. So on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's that beginner mindset of, oh, well, I'm just learning. I don't want to like invest anything into that because once I get better, that's when it'll matter more. And I would say a coach is important if you're the only prerequisite is, do you have goals to be better? If you want to stay in the, I'm shooting 120, I'm just out there to have some beers with my friends and all that, that's fine. No, not everybody needs a coach. Not everybody should have a coach. I think it's, if you see yourself with any kind of future of the game, this kind of work would be helpful for you to get, whether it's swing instruction, whether it's someone like me who does performance coaching while you're out there, where you're dealing with like pressure situations and figuring out how to navigate those types of things, whether it's a club fitting, things like that, because you you are your best self, but you're also not aware of what you can be sometimes. You have those blind spots. And so what coaching does and is really good for is helping you see those blind spots, making you aware of them so that you can move past them.
One of the things we talked about at the very beginning was everyone's sadness over Ted Lasso, calling it a day. Maybe not.
Oh my
Maybe a
God.
surprise season 4 coming. But
Yeah, right.
there are two things that I always was struck by Ted Lasso, and I'd love to hear as a coach, as you think about people playing the game,
Yeah.
think about. One is the advice to be like a goldfish.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that doesn't always mean what people think it means in terms of forgetting, as opposed to trying to make things productive if you remember them, otherwise letting them go. But the other one is curiosity. Being
Yeah.
able to lead with curiosity and questions as opposed to opinion and a stance. Like, how do you think that those can be transferable to us in our everyday golf game?
Oh my God. You said the key word there of curiosity. That is something that has been sort of a foundation in my life for the past decade or so, is if you listen twice as much as you talk, so many more problems will be solved, because I am a person with my own experiences. You are a person with your own experiences, and I don't know them unless I ask you questions about it. But when we were talking before the recording started, learning about your experiences like that makes my day, because it's like, oh, now I know something that I didn't know before. And so as a coach, curiosity is the most important thing, because I don't have all the answers. I will never have all the answers, especially because everybody's game is so different. There's a lot of similarities in what can be wrong or what can be, a barrier to people, but those barriers are approached in different ways. They, these, a lot of the time, what I help people with in the very beginning, usually when one of the first calls, is really understanding people's limiting beliefs. So like, what's holding them back? And while there may be some, categories that it sort of fits into, it's like, well, what brought you to that situation? I can't go in and say, all right, this, this drill or whatever is going to help you, because I don't know if it will. I don't know your game. I don't know your life. So it's really on my end. And this is where coaching comes in. It's on my end and my responsibility to figure out what is holding you back, what is getting you in your own way. And then we work together to kind of move past that. So curiosity is the foundation of everything that I do. Yeah.
And how, we all hit that shank, we all hit that tough shot. What does it mean to productively forget things on the course?
Yeah. So to productively forget something is knowing that those shanks and whatever don't define who you are as a golfer. It doesn't define who you are as a person. And to kind of have that confidence to say, okay, I can go back to my process and believe in my process and make the right decision here. Because a lot of time, honestly, you brought up something really crucial with a lot of people. Things that they struggle with is, you have those shanks, you have the tops, you have the whatever bad shot it is, and then the wheels start spinning on like, okay, how can I make up that shot? How can I now, save a shot? And they try to go for hero shots, and then that kind of gets them into worse situations. Like statistically, you're going to get in a worse situation after that. So the kind of forgetting, like you said, is not really about forgetting. It's about understanding, hey, that happened. How do I come back to being me in my game?
Love that.
For sure. I mean, I think to kind of piggyback off that, when I'm working with people, and I just had this conversation with somebody recently, it's like, do you want to be a perfect golfer knowing that there's human error and you're not going to be perfect, so you're not trained for that error? Or do you want to be a golfer that can adapt? You hit a bad shot, you can get back on course. And so I think that idea of separating or removing the illusion that we can be perfect at anything that we do. We can be great, we can be fantastic, but perfection is really hard to achieve. And make adaptability, being able to be agile, being able to have the stamina to endure stress, a more attractive option. And it sounds like that's what you do with a lot of the people you work with.
Yeah. And I always say to people when they, they don't always say they want to be perfect, but when that kind of idea gets brought up, it's like, isn't that boring? Because then it's so predictable, and you're like, do you really want to be perfect? It's kind of like, I feel like I got myself in a bad position and I can get myself out because I know who I am, sounds like way more fun to me.
For sure.
Adaptable. I love the adaptability. That's cool.
One thing we like to do is ask people for their, like quick hit piece of advice, and generally we leave it open, but with a golf coach who has a lot of access to the psychology of golfers, new and experienced, one of the things that we talk a lot about here is inclusivity. And, you get into the head of folks who are new golfers who are going and feeling that pressure. You talked about your wife feeling that pressure at the first tee. If you had a piece of advice for anyone who's going to a golf course, maybe looking around, maybe being paired with that single who seems like they're a little bit nervous, about how they can better make people feel welcome, because I think that's a huge part of what we want to see happen in the game. What would you say? Like, how should people be thinking about the psychology of that human who they're
seeing somebody who may be alone and
exactly
looking kind of nervous on the course?
Yeah.
I would say So recently, actually, not too long ago, I was at the driving range and I saw this guy who was just hitting balls. He wasn't doing too well, and he was kind of making it known, like verbally, not in like a angry way or anything like that, but you could tell he was kind of embarrassed by like the shots he was hitting. So I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, is everything all right? Like, what's going on with the game?" And so we started a conversation. And I think the biggest barrier to people doing that is you never know how someone's going to react. So my piece of advice is almost like being in a lunchroom. Like, ask yourself, what's the best thing that could happen if you do talk to them? What could you find out from this person? And, and that takes you know a some discipline on yourself to not be afraid to challenge yourself. And I think that kind of goes along everything in golf. Is you can't skate by and expect better things to happen. You have to challenge yourself to be better. And so if you see somebody feeling like they might look excluded, just walk up to them with that curiosity. And that's where it comes back to it too, is be curious. Just say, "Hey, what's going on?" Or I noticed XYZ. You want to join in or whatever. What's the worst that can happen? They say no, or they cuss you out. Yeah, it's going to feel bad if they cussed you out, but then the interaction's over and you never have to talk to them again. That, you know?
I really love that. And I think that part of what we talk a lot about is making sure people don't feel alone at the
Yeah.
first two, and really building that experience that, everyone's out for a reprieve from whatever that thing may be, whether it's
Yeah.
work or family or just needing that mental break or the nature walk. But making people feel welcome is so important in our game, and something we sometimes don't talk about enough. We talk about
Yeah.
the fittings and the scores, but sometimes what's maybe most important is the fact that you made someone feel like they could come walk again.
Yeah. I think you said reprieve, and it reminded me that we are playing a game. Most of us are not out here to make money. This isn't our livelihood. We are here to blow off some steam. We're here to, better ourselves in maybe a fitness way or in our game, but it's never that serious. And so I think a lot of people get caught up in, like we were saying before, with the vulnerability. They bring their egos so much into the game that it doesn't end up being a reprieve. And then they think about it over and over again. They leave the course and all they can think about is the bad things that happen. And then it becomes not fun anymore. And so, like our friends, the par train, who are all about enjoying the ride, is just enjoy the ride. Just enjoy the game. Have some fun out there. It's really not as serious as we make it out to be. And if you have fun, honestly, your scores will probably drop too.
Love it. All
Yeah.
right. Kyle Holden, Feel Under Par, performance coach. Check him out. Check the links, and can't wait to see the reaction to this one. Great pod, and really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, you guys.